Hi, I'm Dr. Mike, and this is NFGeeks. Well, today is Theme Thursday on NFGeeks, and that means I pick a theme and make a video about that theme and encourage others to also make a video on that theme. And so that's today's video. And for today's topic, picked a real heavy one today. For today's topic, I picked death to talk about typology and death and ideas about death as they relate to typology. Um, Before I get into that, I want to say that these Theme Thursday videos and the theme on the NF Geeks forum, I know has been pretty heavy, pretty serious topics, and I've done that on purpose because I feel that if you're going to talk about any kind of subject field, paradigm, ideas, any of those things, you have to apply them to the real world and real things in your life that are actually very serious and very large and very, wrenching to do that. Because I say that because otherwise, this is all pointless. Okay, really, there's no real meaning to it if we just, do this as some intellectual circle jerk. Okay, there has to be something more meaningful to our exploration of ideas in our personal lives and in the world at large. Okay, um, I say this in the classes that I teach too. I say this when I teach psychology. I say this when I teach philosophy or ethics. That it has to be more than just playing badminton with ideas. Sometimes you have to really sort of apply it to something important, something serious, so that ideas can actually change your life and make things different, make things better, whatever it is. Okay, that is why you should explore any idea, okay, to make yourself a better person, a better lover, a better citizen, a better father or mother or brother or sister or son or daughter. It's to make you into more than what you are. Any discussion of ideas, and that's true about MBTI. Now, I realize some of you will say, well, it's just a hobby. Well, it's a hobby for me too. Obviously, it's a little more serious for me, maybe a lot more. But regardless, if you're going to, talk about ideas, these ideas have to be applicable to the major things in life, and that's what you should be using them for, the major things in life. Okay, because that's where it's going to make the most difference. The absence of ideas also is going to make the most difference in any of those things. Now, so that's the most important reason. Connected to that is also to kind of get people who make videos regarding MBTI to do this, to talk about more serious things, okay? If you've noticed, I've never really done a versus video. There's no like, ISFJ versus INFJ. And that's not knocking anybody who makes those videos, but honestly, there's like 70,000 of those videos, all over the internet, and we all know that because we've all seen them. Do we really need 70,000 in one? Okay, really. I don't think that we do. And honestly, I think those types of videos, and even my own that are kind of goofy, are fun, but it's also dodging the bigger issues and dodging the bigger things that go on in our lives and the issues that really affect our type and how the foibles of our type interfere with various large issues, It's a way of sort of skirting around the real importance of all this. So that's one of the reasons why I've picked um, very serious themes, or heavy, they're not that serious, but heavy themes for Thursday so that we really kind of get into a deeper place and a deeper way of thinking about all this stuff, okay? So I picked death because someone I know had a relative, a father that passed away, and that had me thinking about death and the idea of death, and also how types relate to death, and that's because of my own sort of events, my own events around death and how I interact with them. I realized that there's been this sort of ENFP thing going on regarding death for a very long time. Okay, so for example, I am usually chosen to read scripture during the Mass. They're usually Roman Catholic deaths because my family's Catholic. Um, So, but I've always picked to read the scripture, okay, always during Mass, the Old Testament reading and then the New Testament reading, one of Paul's letters or whatever. And I'm actually really, really good at it. Okay, I'm really great at reading scripture. I practice. I mean, I don't just practice reading it. I do it out loud before the night. I kind of do rehearsals of it. Very sort of presentation and acting through it. And then I practice, what you're supposed to do during Mass, because it's not just, other services. Catholicism is all very orchestrated and choreographed, and you go in the middle and you genuflect, and then there's a lot of things you got to do. So I make sure I do all of those things. And I get a lot of compliments. Every time I've done this, I've had people say, "My God, you read it better than the priest." That was amazing. People have said really, really nice things. And it's always during this very serious moment. I mean, funerals. Okay, very, very serious moment of grief and things like that. I read the scripture at my mother's funeral. Okay, both. Okay, got up there. Um, Again, everybody was impressed. So that's one way that my type comes in when dealing with death, is that I'm good at giving the presentation to the group that needs to be given, and reading and all that. So that's one thing that I'm good at, and that made me think about, well, how does type in general deal with this? Well, let's think about the temperaments for a minute. So, for example, let's talk about SJs. And remember, I come from an SJ family, so I know how SJs are during funerals. And it's very duty oriented. If there's a duty to perform, they're going to do it. If there's a last wish of the dying person regarding what they want in the funeral, they are going to do it, okay? Whatever duty calls. Now, if there's not specific duty, whatever the cultural aspect of the funeral is, that's where the duty lies, okay? That's where it goes. So, for example, okay, I come from old school people. I was born late in life, and so I come from very old school people whose parents, my grandparents didn't speak English. Okay, so it's really old school Catholicism before the Vatican II, ecumenical council, and we're talking old. My mother used to talk about how she wished the Mass was in Latin again, but she'd learned Latin. She knew it. That's why. Um, but when there's a funeral in the family, it's very, very traditional. So, first of all, you wear black. Everybody wears black. That's it. You wear black and you wear nice black. Okay? You dress semi formal for the wake, and then it's all formal black for the funeral. Okay? So, it's your best suit, black, whatever. Everybody. Women, not suits, but everybody wears black, that, and very respectful in that way. Um, Secondly, at least this is the SJs of my family. Uh, Secondly, there's also decorum, how you act during the wake, how you act during the funeral. That doesn't mean people don't cry or anything like that. It's not stoic, especially since I don't come from a stoic ethnic background. It's Azorean Portuguese, and there's nothing stoic about Azorean Portuguese people, let me assure you. But there's a right way to act, there's a wrong way to act, and you have to follow that. Okay? In terms, it's a show of respect. It's a show of respect to the community, to the family, all of this. Believe me, this was drilled into my brain about this. This was very, very serious. And uh, there's something to that, I have to say. Okay, because I mean, my mother was very clear. She ESFJ, so she was very clear about there's a right way to dress and there's a wrong way to dress at a funeral. Okay, and she was very, very clear on this point. And I have to say that I agree what she was saying about it. I sort of internalized that, but I'm not disagreeing with it. I think she was right about that. There's a right way and there's a wrong way to dress. My mother would have flipped out the way people dress for funerals now. People dress for funerals like they're going to barbecues, okay? And I'm a little judgmental because I'm thinking I'm sort of channeling my mother and my family, the way I grew up. But certainly the SJ way of handling death is very, very dutiful. Whatever is required to be done for the community at this time regarding the death, that's what they're going to do, and they're going to expect everyone else to do it. Okay, and when other people aren't doing it, they're going to be highly critical. Anybody who went to one of our family funerals who weren't like being appropriate, believe me, that was noticed. For everybody. So that's SJ. I think SP. I had an interesting observation of SPs, and that has to do with my friend John, who killed himself. I've talked about him lots of times. And again, he was an alcoholic, musician, self-destructed. Now, a lot of his fellow musician friends and bandmates, former bandmates actually, because his alcoholism had forced himself out of many, many places. My um, my experience of them was that they sort of toasted him in the moment, okay? Because they're all sort of SPs. I know SPs when I see them. They're SP musicians. And they all sort of toasted to him. And at the moment when I saw this was at the reception after his funeral. When I saw it, I was kind of very critical of it because I was thinking about his alcoholism and his death. And I was also feeling the NF wound, the deep, deep NF wound that everybody was feeling, his father, his grandmother, my wound. Okay, so when they did this, I was pretty much like, I was angry. I was like, you jackasses, it's that behavior that caused his death. I was not sympathetic. But as I think about it now, I realize they were celebrating him in SP ways. They were toasting to him, and he lived a life, and he burned both he burned the candle at both ends, and he was a lot of fun. So let us drink to him, and live in the moment and move on. That's what he would want, and that is what he would want. I mean, I gotta say, okay, he would not want my grieving. It would bother him. Um, but he would want that toast. So now I'm not as critical of it because I realize that's an SP form of understanding death and celebrating death. It's a party. We're going to celebrate this person's life. I guess these are the people who show up at funerals as if they're going to barbecues. But that's that. NTs, I think, take this very scientific, matter-of-fact way. Every NT I know, when talking about death, they just say, well, death, nothing happens. Your body, decomposes, and then those things go into the ground and they help grass grow. It's all about the biological process that goes on after death. Okay, that's what they're interested in. That's how they see death. Any kind of metaphysics they don't even want to talk about, okay, because it's not provable, it's not scientific. And this is the thing that does happen with death, okay? You die, your body starts to decompose, you put it in the ground, whatever. That's what happens. In terms of materialism, in terms of their physical self, that makes sense to me. And NFs, two things happen with NFs. NFs get very deep and weepy and sorrowful, and it goes right in. Even if you're not crying, it goes right in. My mother's death was very sort of serious, and I watched her die too. She died right in front of me in the hospital, and she was closer to me. I saw her death closer than this camera is right now, and I the death was very, very meaningful and deep. And also, I think NFs understand the transformation and transcendent aspect of death, not just of the dead, but what it does to the self. One of the things that really struck me was that even though I watched my mother die, I was right with her, there was something sort of transforming and spiritual and therapeutic about doing that. I know everyone thinks it'd be horrible, but that's not the case, or at least it wasn't the case with me. I'm glad I was there. I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I was with there through the whole passing. It doesn't traumatize me at all. I realized its value doing that. So I think NFs get into sort of a very wisdom-like questioning place of the meaning of life and what happens to us after death and what is the reality of that and how do I deal with that, and it's all that NF stuff that deals with death. And I think one thing that's important then is that we need to help each other through death, through their temperament and not your own. This kind of goes back to the communication thing. And I realize that now. Again, at my friend John's funeral, if they had actually talked to me, I would have been uh, quite angry at them. They didn't, so there was no incident. But I realize now that honestly, that is how SPs handle death. So the way to help somebody handle death is to figure out what their temperament and type does with death, and then do that thing with them. Okay, so. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So when you're with the SJs are expecting a certain level of duty, decorum, way of speaking, way of dressing. You know what? You do that. If for no other reason, out of respect, because if that's a family that needs that, that's what you do. You respect them. If it's SPs and they want to dance and wear Hawaiian shirts and put the body in a Hawaiian shirt and carry it around, the casket around, have a good time. I don't think that's appropriate, but if they want to have that sort of party atmosphere, let them. That's what the SPs need. And Ts just need they need the science stuff. They also don't need any of the other stuff. They'll do it, but only because it's their family and they have been asked to, and they'll do it. But honestly, if it's just a bunch of NTs together and they want to have some funeral where they blow the ashes out of the International Space Station into into the cosmos, because they want to see if it lands on other planets and does that spark life or whatever, some sort of experiment, then let them do that. Okay. And NFs are going to weep and cry and get into this very deep place about death. Let them do that. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of mental illness. It's the way NFs handle death. Okay? All right, so that's the video for today. So please make your videos about death and your experience of death, or what do you think about in terms of type in death. And one last thing is, like, I don't like the word challenge, like challenge videos. It sounds like a fight. So I'm going to call these mine anyway. I'm going to call these encouragement videos. Okay, I'm encouraging you to come join in this dialogue, and you can call them encouraging. If you call them challenge, fine, it's okay. But I want to get away from that word. Certainly, I'm going to get away from that word. So this is an encouragement video, so you can talk about today's theme, which is death. Okay, so that's it. All right, enjoy and make your videos.